Everfree Guardian, Chapter 5, Part 4. In the time that Applejack and Fluttershy called upon Nate for help, Twilight had been facing issues of her own. Affected just the same as the farm mare and Shy Pegasus, the bookworm was sporting a bit of an oddity in her horn. That is, her horn was loose and soft as opposed to its natural bone structure. She was still able to use magic to a degree, but it wasn't nearly as much as before. Gathering up all of her friends after a few had come to her house, she saw the ill effects of their experience in the Everfree forest on the others as well, starting with Pinkie and her unnaturally swelled tongue. Both Spike and Twilight stared at the normally chatty pink pony, as her means of communication were effectively silenced like this. It seems whatever happened, it affected each of the main six in ironic ways, tapping into what made them who they were and playing off that almost like a joke. Spike tried to guess what Pinkie was attempting to say, only for Rainbow Dash to come crashing through the window and kamikaze into the bookshelves behind Twilight's. Covering her head as the Pegasus knocked down an assortment of books, she looked down at the speedster as she struggled to get her untangled from the mess.
She's trying to say that Sakura slapped us all with a curse!
Twilight cringed as Rainbow Dash ripped herself from the ladder steps, breaking it as she rubbed the back of her neck. Rarity came in next, agreeing wholeheartedly as her mane, fur, and overall hair was just wild. It was legitimately all over the place, covering her head to toe and obscuring her eyes and clothes. Fluttershy came in after the puffed-up Rarity, looking as normal as can be with a tiny Applejack riding on her shoulder. Applejack was noticeably quiet considering her perspective. She still wanted to believe that she was right, but her worker's words rang inside of her head. She did go charging into the Everfree without protection, which is something she rarely does. Then again, her little sister had gone in there as well, her intentions on chasing after Sakura for whatever reasons. She didn't have time to pack any gear, so when she went through with a lowered guard, it's possible that what the human claimed was true. Maybe the Everfree itself did this and not Sakura? A small part of her denied this, but the honest Apple listened to the rational side of her brain and forged her words as she opened her mouth.
Gotta say, we definitely did get into something out in the woods, Twilight, be it a curse or some weird voodoo from the Everfree forest itself. We're all infected.
Twilight looked from the tiny Applejack to Fluttershy, seeing she was relatively unharmed by the nature of the Everfree, or a curse from Sakura.
Wait, Fluttershy seems alright. Y'all ever seen the sweetest, gentlest voice in Equestria turn into my big brother Sugar Cube?
Twilight turned back to the deadpanning Applejack, gawking as she finally realized what she was implying. Applejack only pursed her lips as she patted the side of Fluttershy's head.
It'll be a hot minute before she'll feel comfortable speaking.
Rainbow shook her head as the days finally faded, flapping her wings to try and steady herself, only to fall flat again.
Yeah, forget a hot minute, we have to get this cure fixed now, and the only way to do it is by going to Sakura's!
Twilight glared up at her as she tucked down her tail, taking Rainbow Dash back to the ground so she wouldn't crash into anything again.
It's not a curse, Rainbow!
Applejack rolled her eyes at the two, before sighing.
Normally I'd be agreeing with Dash, but we don't have to do anything. My employee's already gone in that treacherous forest to find the Everfree Guardian. He knows Sakura, and he can get her to make an antidote for this hex.
Twilight threw up her arms, before placing them on her hips.
Oh, for crying, it's not a hex either! Look, if the Guardian's being sent, then there's no need for us to endanger ourselves. Let's just wait this out. At least for another day. Oh, forget that! I'm not flying like this for another day! If no pony else is gonna buck up and see this through, I'll do it myself!
Before any pony could deter her, Rainbow Dash had collided with the ground after attempting to fly, deciding it best to just hoof it to the Everfree and keep her boots on the ground. With Dash gone, Pinkie was next to go, chasing after her Pegasus friend while spouting gibberish through her swollen tongue. Rarity followed suit, not wanting to withstand the amount of hair that she had to deal with for longer than she needed to. All that was left in the library was Fluttershy, Twilight, and the shrunken Applejack. Twilight bit her lip in frustration and worry before picking up the miniature farm mare, placing her on her shoulder as she ran out of her home with Fluttershy. She didn't want to do this, especially when a professional was already looking for their cure, but if her friends were going to recklessly charge into that damn forest of horrors, she would at least be there to help them if they ever attracted any danger. Catching up with the eager mares that charged ahead of her, the sextet were now on their way to Sakura's. Twilight glanced at Applejack as she ran.
This Everfree Guardian your worker is friends with, do you really think that he'll be willing to help us? Didn't Fluttershy say that he was responsible for Gilda's condition?
Applejack's eyes narrowed as she held on to Twilight's ear, growling as the unicorn turned a corner after her friends.
Oh, that no-good featherbrain got what was coming to her. The Guardian was just defending himself. If it hadn't been for Gilda,
She sighed as she tipped her hat over her eyes.
I'm sure he would have come out of his shell by now.
Twilight kept her gaze on Applejack for a brief moment before turning back forward to avoid a branch.
Well, I hope to meet him soon. You make it sound like he's much less of a menace than what was seen with Gilda.
He ain't no villain, Twilight. He's just troubled, and even I nor Fluttershy know why, and we've seen him around for quite a few weeks now. And my worker knew him well for around the same time.
I hope he gets better then.
Twilight hopped over a downed log, the path thickening as the fog of the forest was waning. Soon enough, the group was coming upon a clearing, where one of the enlarged trees was repurposed into a hut of some sort. If the path taken to rescue Applebloom was any indication, Twilight would assume that they had arrived. They were at Zecora's home. With a concussive blast of a shotgun shell, the last beast in his way went down, dissipating into nothing as the forest consumed its corpse. Standing amidst the rubble of an old castle, Nate had finally arrived to his destination, where what he saw lay just beyond an old carpet. What was supposed to be a simple visit turned into yet another adventure. Zecora was able to make the cure Pony sought to obtain, but to do so, she required another ingredient. Without it, the effects would remain temporary and the girls would retain their odd appearances and voices. Zecora had pointed Nate in the right direction, leading the human to a familiar ruin. This castle that sits in the Everfree forest. Nate had been here before, always tiptoeing around the perimeter and only rarely entering the courtyard, but actually never going inside. The reason for that is that the place was heavily booby-trapped and littered with monsters that settled in as age crumbled the castle to nothing but an olden structure infested with overgrowth. But now Nate had no other choice but to enter and put on his attentive skills to the test. From timberwolves to manticores, the human used everything in his present arsenal to lay them all to waste, and by the end he had arrived in the room where his treasured ingredient resided. A pinkish illumination meshed with the flower's residue. The thing looked exactly like Poison Juke, except it was a strain that released pheromones that would expedite the timeline of heat seasons for most animals. God knows if this works on ponies, and Nate wasn't gonna find out. Clipping off a leaf from the plant, he pocketed it inside of a small plastic bag, which he used a line of string to tie off. Last thing he needed was another creature coming after him for a different reason. Putting the ingredient in one of his backpack pockets, he turned to leave. But he stopped when he noticed that the pinkish glow wasn't the only light shining in this one of many halls. Within a nearby room, he could see a blue glow emanating into the hallway. Raising an eyebrow, he decided to investigate, following the source of the light into a small room off to the side of a bedchamber that was decorated with a nighttime theme. From the looks of the bookshelf in his way, this room was a secret chamber activated by a false book lever. With the case already destroyed by natural causes, Nate was able to step through, walking into the small room and finding a bare of any furniture or materials. That is, save for what he found on a single stand. It was a flask. A single glowing flask that was radiating some kind of hue like the flower, though not as potent. It seemed to be filled with some kind of liquid essence, and looking towards his left allowed him to see through a small hole in the small room to another identical one. The very same flask sat upon another pedestal, except this one was glowing a sunny yellow-orange color. Confusion ebbed its way into his mind. The human had no idea what the purpose of these two flasks were, nor what they really contained, but something compelled him to take them. Whether it'd be his own curiosity or some other force edging him to take them, he grabbed the blue flask, then reached over and nabbed the yellow one right off of their stands. Placing them in his bag, he zipped up the pocket and made his way back out of the castle. Lucky for him, the place was relatively empty. After dealing with so many of those things, he had nearly cleaned the entire property of any ghoulish creatures that spawned from this area of the kingdom. Getting back outside and crossing over the bridge, Nate retracted his steps back to Zecora's hut, though he didn't expect to find it as it was. Zecora's front yard was a mess. The clearing destroyed and her masks were riddled everywhere. A large hole was in the tree that Zebra repurposed as a hut and the windows were broken. Nate would have assumed the forest had done something had it not been for the commotion still going on inside.
What have you done with Applebloom? What have you done to us?
Applebloom? Was she out here? Why would she dare to trek through the Everfree alone, let alone to Zecora's? Didn't she know that this section was more dangerous than the one Nate set up his house in? Not to mention it was roughly unguarded and left above ground. Not at all strategic in the ways of deterring the oddities that roam here.
Ponies, what is this you... No, you not know what you do! You've spilled my precious brew!
God damn it. They picked up the pace of the hut, approaching the door inside as the crashing inside subsided.
We're on to you, Zecora. I didn't want to believe that you cursed us, but the evidence is overwhelming. You made me look ridiculous.
You made me sound ridiculous. Nate paused at the sound of Fluttershy's masculine voice, groaning to himself as he stepped up to the porch.
How dare you! You destroy my home, destroy my work, then rudely accuse me of being a jerk? You put this curse on us! Now you're going to—
Every pony in the room flinched as the door was kicked open by the human, the battered frame being ripped off in the process and causing the entire thing to collapse. Staring in, Nate saw Applejack and Fluttershy among their friends, his request for them to stay uninvolved with their curation ignored, obviously. and now they were causing more problems than necessary. Hell, he looked around and saw exactly what Sakura stated. They destroyed her home. Man, imagine someone busting into your house and breaking everything in sight and then blaming you for something you never did. And then for some reason they just shit in your cereal. Anyway, let's get on to our happy donators. Top donators are 630, Peter Coulthard, J Tinman, Darkside, and Only One Thing. Rayden, Narwhals, Blackmoonheart, Pastel Skies, Austin Rollins, Crazy Killer 557, Stu Hex, Sword Brother and Mordred, Omicron Library, Will, Chris, Twinkie, Hatzaza, Ridesoul, Dospo, and many more fantastic people. Thank you all so much for watching this video and live life to the fullest.